Good morning, everyone. I just waited a couple of seconds before I start speaking and welcoming you. Welcome to the IAM4RE deep dive about embedding intellectual asset management and standardization into research projects. Very nice to see you. My name is Claire, and I'm here today together with my dear colleagues, Michele and Magnus. And I'm, on the one hand, your moderator today, but I'm also one of the speakers. So together with my two great colleagues, we will spend the next 90 minutes looking at what it really takes to move a Horizon Europe project from results to impact. But a few housekeeping rules before we start. So the session runs until 11:30. Please keep your microphone muted. Everybody has the possibility to switch on your microphone, but please wait and use the chat first for questions and comments, and then we will give you a chance to speak at the very end when we have the Q&A. And I will keep an eye on the chat, of course, but I think the best is that we just, go on with the deep dive content and the conversation that we are having. And then I'm anyway asking you many times about your opinion, as I exaggerated a bit and included, I don't know how many Mentimeter slides. So I hope you like it, and I hope you're up to some interactivity. The session will be recorded, and in order to use the Mentimeter polls, I would kindly ask you to, either use your phone or open a second browser tab. That makes it much easier. So let me introduce the two colleagues joining me today. So first of all, welcome Michele Dubini. Michele holds a degree in international law from the Catholic University of Milan and a master's in IP law from the University of Alicante. And Michele and me, we are colleagues for more than 13 years. He's actually really my best friend at work. He tries to avoid telling everyone about this, but that's the case. No, Michele has been working in IP already, Horizon 2020 projects, but of course Horizon Europe projects since 2014 as an IP and innovation advisor at IAM, and he is responsible for creating and also negotiating consortium agreements for multinational research consortia, but he also leads, and that's the reason why he's here today with us, he is leading the training activities for the European IP Help Desk also already for quite some time. So, and he is also a booster expert, as I just saw Alessia. Michele is delivering the Intellectual Asset Management Service 3.3. So welcome, Michele, and thank you very, very much for being here.
Thanks to you.
And Magnus Hagwag. Magnus, you have to tell me, did I pronounce your family name correctly?
Close enough, Hagwag.
Hagwag, okay, thank you so much. So Magnus is an expert in competitiveness, IP, innovation, and standardization with more than 25 years experience in education and knowledge transfer. We also go way back. We made also like 12 years ago already at conferences. And he is also the CEO of House of Knowledge, and he develops serious games and e-learning solutions on IP, innovation, and standardization. He was actually one of the first people I ever met who developed serious games. And he has contributed to the European Commission's joint initiative for standardization and is active within ISO TC 279 Innovation Management as convener of the working group on terminology. And Magnus, thank you so much for agreeing to be here and represent the standardization training part today. So the reason why I invited Michele and Magnus was that on the one hand, we want to talk about impact in EU-funded projects. We want to talk about IP management, intellectual asset management, and standardization. But both experts today have a crazy experience when it comes to IP general training, standardization and IP training. Is it changing? Yeah, okay. Now, before we start, as I said, I already blackmailed all of you with my Mentimeter, so I hope you are able to connect. Let me quickly switch to Menti here. So the first question I prepared in order to somehow read the room is, when you think about impact in research projects, what is the first word that comes to mind? So please really, just a second. Yeah, there are 12. Perfect. I wasn't sure if I had launched it. Yeah, I have launched the poll. I'm also not 100% familiar with Menti, I have to admit. Just one word, please. Crazy. 15. Okay. We give it some more time. Take your time. Okay, interesting. So benefit comes up very often. I see commercialization, research education, valorization, of course, building connections, measurement, social changes, public policy lifecycle, implementation, result. Commercialization, valorization, and benefit. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is exactly why we are here today. So, because impact often starts in our mind as a publication or deliverable, or then also as a form of dissemination. But this session today actually really is about what it takes to move beyond that. So, valorization, commercialization. But measurement, of course, we all heard about the KPIs. Thank you. I'm going back to the presentation. So let me quickly give you an intro of, let's say, 7 minutes. So for a long time, that's, well, our experience, the central question in research funding was actually quite simple. It was really, what results will your project deliver? Or then success was also more measured at the final review. Did you deliver the outputs? Did you meet the milestones? Was the science sound? So these are still questions, but it somehow evolved. Horizon Europe has changed that question. And the new question is now, how will your results be used? And success is now measured actually beyond the project in uptake, as we already heard, valorization, and, well, how we could call it real world change. And just take a closer look at this triangle that I put here on the slide. And for me, knowledge valorization is actually just the beginning, because then comes deployment, so actually getting results into use, and then uptake. So that means adoption at scale, across sectors, and being honest, I think each stage is harder than the one before. And each stage also requires deliberate design. So, and on the right side, you see this signpost, and I think that captures the picture also quite well. There are many directions, and the question is not whether your project really generates something valuable, because it does, for sure. But the question is whether you have chosen a direction, and then in the end, to keep the terminology straight, build a pathway to get there. So that shift from what will we deliver to how will this be used and applied is actually the mindset shift that really decides whether or not you're successful in valorization. Then, another Mentimeter. So before I show you where projects typically fall short, I want to hear from you. So because I think the honest answer in the room might be more revealing than any slide I can show you. So wait, let me go back. becoming an expert here. Please. So where is impact mainly addressed in your project? And let me close this window because there's something loud going on outside of the window. Just a second. Crazy, okay? So yeah, just to explain what is there on screen. So the options are proposal stage. I say impact was framed during writing, but to be honest, rarely revisited. Depends, of course. I'm just exaggerating and polarizing. Then dedicated work package. I think, yeah, many of us also know this. So a specific work package covers then exploitation, dissemination. But so as far as it gets, I think that's often also mixed with communication. So we have the CDE work package. Then the dissemination phase. So impact is considered once the results are available. And I just heard that yesterday again. So that's the main point for many people I talk to start. Then across multiple work packages, it's then embedded throughout the project structure. That's a good point. Or, and some of you also clicked that option, it's not clearly defined. So that means impact responsibility is unclear or simply absent. And I think the answer from the community is clear. 60% of you say that it's distributed across work packages. I think that's a good starting point. Still, some of you also start thinking about it already during the proposal stage. I think that's the most important option, but across VPs could also mean that you thought about it during the proposal stage. So, next slide. So why projects struggle with impact? I wanted to start with something that really goes beyond tools and frameworks, because creating impact from research is for me, a cultural change. I don't know how you feel about it, but too often my experiences show that impact is treated as something to consider when writing the proposal, or when reporting outcomes have to be prepared, or when you also have to prepare a research assessment. And for me, that also shows very often that it lives at the edges of the project. And I also very often hear that's someone else's job. So why do I have, like, researchers also often tell me, yeah, I need someone to help me with this because I don't know. Or it will be dealt with then at a later stage. But if we really want knowledge valorization to happen, so let's say respond to societal needs, impact must become really embedded in everything we do. So across work packages is, as I said, a good starting point. But for many, this also really requires this shift in mindset. So for researchers, for example, it means that they should not only be asking what new knowledge can be generated, but who may benefit from it, how, and under which conditions. So I saw some familiar faces in the list of participants, but now speaking from the perspective of research managers, KTT professionals, innovation and impact officers, for us, it means building synergies across functions and providing researchers with a seamless support so they know what's on the menu of the support system through the entire project lifecycle. So that also means that they have to understand what's the project lifecycle. But we have to really start at proposal design. We have to support through the implementation. We have to guide valorization early on and then help them to generate real impact. And this is what we are going to talk about today, this gap. Also the tools, of course, but yeah. So let me see. 2 more slides, Michele, and then I'm coming to the expert who's actually here to talk about this. So I've been talking about this gap. So how do we close the gap? The answer is we design impact from the very first moment. So here you can see the slide presents 4 questions. They sound simple, but yeah, in my experience, most projects cannot answer all 4 clearly. And the ones that can are the ones that actually create impact. So the first one is, what are your key exploitable results? So we all heard that term CUR many times. When we write a proposal, we have to prepare this CUR table overview, but what does it really mean? And we also know that not all outputs are equally valuable for exploitation, or utilization, I think is the better term, valorization. So that means you need to identify which specific results have the highest potential for uptake, for commercialization. Do you really want to go towards commercialization? Or which results have the highest potential for policy influence? And ideally, you have to do that before you generate them. That needs a lot of experience. And you also sometimes happen to create something just aside of the real research endeavor, let's say. Then the second question is, who needs them? Who will actually change their behavior because of your results? So we want you to name them. Markets, sectors, institutions, communities. And if you cannot name them, to be honest, you don't have a real impact pathway. Then third, who owns them? And I think, Michele, that's a question you have to cope with very often. So IP ownership and governance must be really resolved early already when you, for example, prepare the consortium agreement. So what we see in the initiatives I'm involved in, unresolved ownership is one of the most common reasons exploitation never really happens. So partners wait, nothing gets decided, and the project ends. So then the fourth question is, how will they be used? So map out the exploitation pathways. So it's either licensing, spin-off, policy adoption, standardization. So you need to assign this as a responsibility to someone in the consortium or to a group. So otherwise, no one really feels the commitment. And then from deliverable to use. So this slide, if you want, shows the journey, or what the journey looks like in practice. Every research project generates outputs. So might it be deliverables as documents, data, findings, yeah, what have you. But to be honest, a deliverable sitting in a repository is not real impact. So the journey from knowledge adoption has 4 steps, and none of them is really automatic. So let's see, you have to identify the curves we talked about already before. So the ones with real exploitation potential, and then you make a deliberate decision about protection, sharing. What do you, for example, protect with intellectual property rights like a patent? Or what do you publish openly? What do you share? Is there potential to license an IPR? So, and then you map out the exploitation pathways. So who will commercialize this? Who will use it? Who will build on it? And only then you have actually a real pathway. But each step requires a decision, an owner, and resources. And if any of these steps is missing, I think the chain is also breaking quite quickly. Okay, we have one more Menti. How effectively is intellectual asset management integrated in your project? Let me switch to Mentimeter. So we have the option not at all, minimal, partial, substantial, or fully embedded. Crazy. Okay. Let's wait a couple of more seconds. But only 18% are saying it's fully embedded. So I would be curious to hear why. Okay. I'm sorry for annoying you so much with the Mentimeters, but I really wanted to know what you think. And I hope that also my colleagues who are participating here are participating in the Menti. Just kidding. Okay. But yeah, I think this is the best introduction for you, Michele. So
Yes, for sure. Shall I start, Claire?
yes, so my first question for you, Michele, is how can intellectual asset management be concretely integrated into individual work packages? So not just as standalone deliverables, but as live management process that runs through the whole project with all your experience.
Yeah, it's really, as we saw it in the Mentimeter, that's a process that goes horizontally, I think, through the different work packages, and many of also the participants today have already understood it. And nevertheless, I think we can add something to that Mentimeter that we saw there, and we can say actually why that's the case. What are the characteristics potentially of this project? And I would start from the very basics, which is the definition of the intellectual property and the asset that needs to be managed. So if we take the definition, we see that intellectual property basically is the production of the output of the human mind. And when that output has a potential market pool or other potential uses that can be applied into society or economical uses and so on, then it basically has a value. Therefore, it becomes an asset. Now, this intellectual property, these assets are finally a synonym of the final output of the project itself. So they are a synonym of the results that are going to be generated. If they are a synonym of the results that are going to be generated, it means that we're going to be finding them in multiple work packages and not just in dedicated work packages, as it can be the exploitation, dissemination, or even now they're called also valorization work packages, which means that this attention to the protection, the attention to the exploitation activities, and especially, as you said before, the identification of the most promising outputs, so the key exploitable results that are the ones that are most likely to become assets because they are the ones that are most likely to be valuable, then it goes horizontally into all the different work packages that have a scientific value, but at the same time, this scientific value basically converts in the generation of the project results. So probably the ideal situation is that we have work packages in which the procedures that are needed to identify, to protect and to exploit and so use the project results in the most effective way are eventually foreseen in one work packages, and that can be, for example, valorization work packages. But then we need to ensure that these practices are then applied and enforced in all the other work packages as well. And that's why this is something that expands, let's say, like the oil into all the parts and let's say different areas of the project, and is not really set into one box, which would be the dedicated work package. This, at least, is what I can see mostly in the project, what we try to make project partners understand also, and what is, it seems to be the healthiest approach. Of course, every project then operates in let's say individual manner, subjective also to the needs and goals of their own research activities, but seen, let's say, from a sort of most effective procedure. I would say that this would be would be the one in a way to follow, and then with all the different ramification that each and every project then it has, depending on the characteristics of the research itself.
So you would see it more as a governance framework that has to be somehow knit into the structure of the project.
Yes, on one hand, if we consider, for example, the valorization or dissemination or exploitation work package, then again, we need to ensure that the right people are in the right place in the work packages for the identification of the key exploitable results, for the putting in place of the protection activities and the analysis also of the results to see which form of protection is applicable in the very specific case. And so when these ramifications start with the specific characteristics of the project, then those measures that had to be implemented because they're foreseen in a specific work package need to be brought also in all other different work packages, because otherwise it's going to be a disconnected brain, let's say, from the main body.
So the ones in charge should really be in touch, like the quality manager, project manager, with all the other parts of the project.
But not just for this, I would say.
No,
also
yeah,
for many other topics. Of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move to the second question. So what do you see as the most frequent errors, mistakes when planning exploitation and impact?
Actually, you spoiled my intervention because you mentioned a few of them. No, I'm just kidding. You mentioned actually a few of them before, but we can go a little bit more in the detail of them potentially if we want. The mistakes. Well, we saw it a little bit with the definitions of exploitation and impact. And what is striking is that very often project partners are not aware of what these two words mean. And that's, I would say, the first groundbreaking mistake, because we need to make sure that all the consortium is on the same page regarding the meaning of exploitation, which is also probably a ill-chosen word from the Commission point of view already, in a way that exploitation in English means to use, but also to overuse potentially something. It's more near to the German word, as you know, for Auswertung, and it's probably a lost in translation, unfortunately, meaning that has been brought into Horizon. In fact, probably in the next framework is going to be brought to valorization. So the first mistake is regarding the word itself, and second is regarding the meaning of impact, which is the measurement of the benefits that are yielded by the project once the results are going to be used. So once the exploitation has been really carried out. So to counter the mistakes that projects normally do, we should start from the very basics, and this is the most basics thing of all. And then there are, let's say, other parts. You mentioned ownership, and that's definitely something that I see, unfortunately, on a day-to-day basis. There are many ways to mistake the concept of ownership. The first one is that, unfortunately, rules by themselves are not that clear or not easy to grasp immediately for the project partners themselves. In fact, when you tell them that results belong to the partners that have generated the project results, you're pretty much telling them nothing, in the sense that they come back with even more questions, and that's perfectly natural, because this sentence per se in a project with 20, 21, 30 project partners does not really mean anything to the ones that have generated the project results. And so we need to go deeper in the analysis of how you can determine the ownership of a project results. And that's specific as well and subjective for every project. The contribution is the action that has made the generation of a project results possible. But this contribution is also not defined officially in the project documentation. So that can be the machinery used for the generation of the project results, of course, the person per month used to generate the results, which principal investigator has been working on that. So really need to go in the detail, and yeah, the rules by themselves are not helping under this point of view. So this is definitely a mistake, and it's a mistake because very often projects start too late in doing this because they say, okay, then that's going to be. But for example, in Horizon 2020, there was no incumbency regarding ownership. So even if the project was over and not on ownership, nobody had talked about, there were no official consequences. Now, in Horizon Europe, we have the results ownership list, which is a document that needs to be handed over to the project officer once the project is going to be over. And in that document, we need to tell the Commission what's the division of the ownership in itself. The consequence is that if this document is not handed over, then there is not going to be the final payment. So there is one step forward. But because this document has to be handed over at the end of the project, the works for the preparation and therefore on the discussion of the ownership start like at the end, so 6 months before, let's say, the project is over, because we need to put together this document. So the timing is a problem, and timing is a problem not only in ownership, but also when we go to exploitation and to dissemination activities, because we know that those activities apply on the results. Results are available only from certain month, and so we start thinking about them only once the results are going to be available. That's also a mistake in the sense that we should already be thinking at least about the activities of exploitation and dissemination, because they need prepared. The simple act of protection is a form of preparation for the usage, because it's going to be easier to exploit if we have protection applied. The problem is that if we don't think about protection before exploitation, there is the risk of disclosing information because we have, as you were saying, activities that are detached, that are not communicating among themselves. And so if we disclose before protecting, there is the risk of ruining patent possibility and therefore also exploitation possibility. There are also mistakes in the identification of the key exploitable results themselves, that they are broadly identified. One example is many projects, for example, in Horizon Europe, are creating platforms in the most different areas, and the key exploitable result is the platform, which is very broad, and let's say under a practical point of view of protection activities, is hard to let's say set into a defined area of protection and so of exploitation as well. So if that's the case, that we have broad key exploitable results, maybe we can better define them with sub key exploitable results that have the advantage of having a lower share of owners, for example, and at the same time, a larger scope, well, let's say not larger scope, but easier identification protection
To manage, to protect.
Yeah, to be applied. Then, if we talk about software, there's a whole jungle of mistakes that that we could also go through, starting from the misconception of protection for software in the European Union. That's a very intricate point, because software as such are protectable, but yeah, nobody except, or let's say nobody in the project knows what this as such means, and so many mistakes come from this point of view as well. There's also the misunderstanding of the relationship between the potential relationship between trade secret and open access, and the exceptions that are connected to that. There's many potential mistakes that even individually can be of hinder for the usage and the exploitation activity, at least in my opinion, and I've seen, unfortunately, many of them happening throughout the different projects.
Yeah, you doesn't make it sound easy, to be honest. Magnus, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes on a practical level, and it's not directly only on the IP, it says on the intellectual asset, that is the complete lack of access rights. So everybody has a right pay, but if you haven't clarified the access right going into the exploitations, this is the Titanic going down because you can't solve it when you started. So having clarified who has access to what of others' background and results to bring into the exploitation needs to be done in the very beginning, because when you have results, it's too late. It's like telling kids you got candy and there's not enough candy, and they say you are not having some candy to two of the kids. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I also think that already having clarity about background IP in general as a partner. So what is the background IP that you then as a partner bring to the project? And are the people that are then concretely working on the project implementation on your behalf aware? That's also, I think, a big thing.
Oh, for sure. For regarding the access, that's completely right, and it connects to what I was saying about ownership, because rules in many cases are there, and also regarding access rights, because for background access has to be provided for project-related activities. Access has to be provided royalty-free, both for background and for project results. But again, we go back to the definition problem of the key exploitable results. So if you haven't defined that properly, then you don't have a clear picture on the access that every partner has and on which specific pieces of information. And regarding what you were saying on background, Claire, you're right as well, in the sense that you wouldn't imagine the mess very often that there is into the consortium agreement in the attachment 1 of the consortium agreement itself, which is the attachment dedicated to the background included, which is the part of the project in which the partners need to write down their contribution in terms of pre-existing information, and therefore in terms of background that they are bringing to the project. And that's very
relevant,
important.
Yeah.
That's very important on the two main points of view. So the access, as Magnus was saying before, because that's information that is going to be used. And if it's not written down, then we have a doubt whether that would be accessible or not, even if the rules theoretically foresee that this information is going to be available for anyone who needs it. But in the second point, that's relevant in terms of ownership itself, because a background can be an objective point of determination for a relevant contribution that has been put into the generation of the project results. And therefore, if it's not written down, then it's a self-damage or a damage self-inflicted by the very same party that hasn't written that down. And the point is very, very important, because the vast majority of the project partners decide to choose the option 2 in the attachment of the consortium agreement. Now, I'm talking about the DESCA model, but it's like 95% of the cases. Option 2 basically says that no information is going to be needed by the other parties of the project in order to generate the project results. And that's in practice, very unlikely, because we're there to work together and generate the project results. But at the same time, it's done because of ignorance, in the most simple term of definition of the term, which is that they don't know what they are exactly signing, and so they're putting as few information as possible. And once they do that, they basically don't recognize the fact that they are doing harm to the project itself and to themselves as well.
Thank you. That also brings me to the next question. So how successful do you see projects balance IP and open science? So the protection or strategic protection of sensitive results, and then also the open access.
I have my own view. No, I'm just kidding. But it's
well, I think everybody here in the room feels somehow the tension of these two topics, but please. Share,
Yes.
spill it.
No, it's interesting because that's also a common mistake. So we are basically we have never left the point number 2. Unfortunately, we're all we're there and we're always going to be there. But for me, it's a misunderstanding because open science is often seen as a antagonist of protection, but that's not the case. And I would like to make you, for example, like one example of that. And one example, the clearest, are patents. If you file for a patent, you are going to be receiving protection on the commercialization that you're going to be doing of your invention. And so you're going to have a limited in time monopoly that will ensure that you're going to be able to decide who's going to have access to the invention and who's not going to have access to the invention. But at the same time, that invention, the abstract, the claims, the description of the invention as well, is going to be published and it becomes common knowledge. What does it mean? Everyone is going to be able to find it, for example, on his SpaceNet, and is going to be able to learn from it, to know how your invention works. The only thing they're not able to do is to use it commercially. So finally, that's also a form of open science, even if that is protected, because we are sharing that information with the whole world. Then there's a additional limitation, let's say, that is not available for commercial use, but still, it's like if you're using a Creative Commons license that is NC, so non-commercial, and that's also a form of openness and open source. So we should, first of all, let's say, step away from this misconception. And then we get into the realm of the relationship between the intellectual property rights and the open science, I would say, with a better understanding of the whole background that is in front of us. There is one hard topic, I would say, here, which is the trade secret. Because if the patent is published, if the patent is available for everyone in terms of knowledge, that's not the case with trade secrets. And within projects, there's the question mark about this form of protection and its application in the project in relation to what is written down regarding openness and open access. And the truth is that trade secret is a choice available in the project exploitation activities if it is justified in terms of the activities that are foreseen in the description of action. So we need to justify that towards the project officer and the commission and tell them the reason why, for example, we have created a very interesting software which we would like to commercialize, but we cannot publish our source code available for everyone because otherwise our commercialization activities would be pretty much impossible, because if the source code is on GitHub and available with an Apache 2.0 license, for example, then nobody is actually going to buy it from us. In our DOA, we had written down that we would be commercializing this software, like, for example, through copyright protection and so also keeping a certain information like the code secret. So in this case, theoretically, there is this friction between, let's say, the open science and the protection, but it's justified by the exploitation goals, and it falls within the exceptions that that are foreseen also for the open science and open source and open access regulations of Horizon.
But if I may, I also think that you can also just go with publishing and sharing specific type of data that is perhaps not decisive for the novelty, for example, or the trade secret, and you're still then, following somehow the open science principles, but not for all of it. Yeah.
Let's take, for example, our example of the software before. Let's say that this software is something that is regulating the pump flow in an industrial system, and it does it more efficiently than it would do with the previous software that were available. Just a silly example. What happens that we have our source code, but we have a ton of information that we have generated throughout the project lifecycle, like, for example, on-field test with the water of different composition, different pressure, and so on. This data is all data that, beside our source code and what we have, can also eventually, if we want, be published as a result of the project itself. And so that's also one point that connects again to the mistakes. It's how we look at the key exploitable results. We shouldn't look at them in like a stone block, which is one thing and that is the only thing. But we should consider the fact that these results very often have different faces with different information that has been generated, and also different ways of protecting them or making them available that applies to one phase but does not actually apply to the other. And that's the case for the software that you were saying, Claire. Absolutely.
Yeah, I also think it depends. Of course, everything is individual, but it also depends on the re-engineering potential and so on. It's like, okay, let's start this.
Yeah,
My
what
fourth
the
question,
last that I just to close up this point 3, I would say that the objective here is really, like, I wouldn't put on a scale protection and open science, because often, as you saw with patent, they're on the same part of the scale. But I would pretty much instead sum them or multiply them in order to ensure that once they are together in the plan for intellectual asset management within the project, they are really a decisive factor when it comes to reaching the impact that the project had foreseen. And that's basically what we were trying to say with the software example as well, that what it really matters is what we need to do for the exploitation activities, and therefore in order to reach impact, and the ways in which we try to do them are then available to us as long as we explain how we are going to be reaching the impact.
Yeah, I think what was very interesting what you said as well was that not I would say the majority is not aware of the fact that you can also, if you reason correctly, keep something really secret and still follow the open access mandate in your project. So that's also a possibility. You just have to explain properly.
Yes.
So thank you. The fourth question, Michele. So at what point in the project lifecycle should standardization first appear on the agenda? So, and did you, I know you're really mostly focused on IAM and IP, but we're here still today to join, these two parts, IP and standardization. So what typically triggers this conversation?
I think I also had it in my recorded presentation, but yeah,
just a mini hint.
No, for
Michele
sure,
is the expert of Model 10 of the training suite.
I definitely agree. No, I would say that standardization happens as a timing problem that we were mentioning before. It has it also very often. It happens a little later than it should happen in every project. I think we need to consider standardization on the two phases, basically. The one is that on one hand, we consider standardization because we need to comply to certain standards that are already there, and therefore, in order for our exploitation to be credible, we need to ensure that we are actually inside the boundaries of the standard, because otherwise what we're going to be creating is not going to be usable. And on the other end, because we are doing research, one of our hopes, let's say, in the research activities could be that we are adding information to the existing standard in order to potentially also improve them. And if you think about those two phases of the standardization, you realize that it is something that if it at least, we'll say, even a little has to do with your project, absolutely needs to be taken into consideration. Because if your project has a low technology from the proposal part already, because if your project has a low technology readiness level, then it might be involved in standardization because it can add, let's say, interesting information to the role of standards in that specific area. If you have a higher technology readiness level, then probably that's when you're going to be having to consider the role of standards in relation to your product, your service, what your project is going to be producing. And so you need to be aware of that already from the very beginning, from the proposal stage, from the first moment onwards. Where's the mistake again? I think we mentioned it before, because standards are a necessary step of the preparation for the exploitation. If we prepare our exploitation too late, then we are making a mistake. And one way of preparing our exploitation too late, as I was saying before, is thinking about standards only when the results are going to be generated. That's very likely to become a problem, as for basically the reasons that I was saying before, in the two phases of importance that standards have, of course, not only in Horizon projects, but I would say in the industry in general. So to answer your question, the earliest, the best, I would say.
We agree on
And
that.
those are
We
the
agree on
reasons.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're anyway also here to hear from Magnus about standards, but wait, just give me a second. Thank you, Michele. That was really great. Thank you for sharing your insights. I would like to hear from our audience again. So, hey, a new Mentimeter. I hope you like it. So I would like to know what is most often missing on the path to impact. Let me open Menti. So the options I chose to show you are user adoption, market access, standards, business model, or stakeholder engagement. You see, I'm trying to lead you somewhere. Okay, so user adoption is at the moment the most often chosen option. The business model, okay. Magnus, no one is missing standards.
No, and that's part of the problem. It's just the fun part.
Yes. But they're so powerful. They're so powerful.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
But
it's the flaw of the education system. Yes.
You can fill out the Menti, Magnus. Okay, so most of you say user adoption is missing. Market access, business model is the second most often chosen option. Okay, wait, before we go ahead with Magnus's interview, I would like to quickly, okay. I want to introduce standardization now, just quickly before Magnus really takes you deeper into this whole topic, let's say. So I think there is a very common misconception, and I want to address it directly, that, let's just get it over with. Everybody thinks standards are very bureaucratic. It's a Pandora's box no one wants to open. That's also what I heard like 10 years back when we were talking about intellectual property rights. So they're slowing you down. They're too technical. They're irrelevant to research teams. So that's what what I hear very often, and you yourself can decide whether or not you heard that already or you share this, but they are not actually. So standards are a shared infrastructure, and they are what in the end allows research results to move from lab to market, lab to the world, if you want. So they are reliable, they are at scale, and they also help to scale across organizational boundaries. So, of course, I know this is no news for Magnus, but I just, wanted to warm you up a bit before he is then starting. So, standards actually provide interoperability. So that means your results work within existing systems, and that adopters are also already using these systems. So these systems have been approved, and then your product is working within this. Then they are also providing trust. That means market, regulators, and users can then also rely on a consistent specification. Well, we are all very happy about the decision to go for USB-C, I think, all of us. So we don't have to. Anyway, compatibility is another advantage. So outputs align with what the sector already understands. That also lowers costs, and scalability. So your solution can grow beyond a single pilot or a single partner. Of course, sometimes, depending on the niche that you're working in, developing a very individual solution for a huge client is, of course, another thing, but I'm just, yeah. So market access is the last one. So that means it's providing compliance and opens procurement and commercial doors, if you want, which otherwise I think stay closed. So the warning at the bottom of the slide, sorry, but I thought I want you really to remember. So without standards, even technically excellent results often remain isolated innovations used by no one beyond, well, the partners involved, the consortium, and so on. And wait, Magnus, I have one more, and one we can also skip if you want. Another Menti. When do you usually think about standards? And this is a question Magnus asked me to add. So we want to know, let's go back to Menti. Do you usually think about standards before applying for a project, before starting a project, during the implementation of a project, after the results are available, or not at all? This is a safe space. You are answering anonymously, so you can just answer honestly. During implementation, that's good. Still, some say after the results are available, but before applying is great. Who's here in the room? I need to check the participation list again. Or they just checked it's a trick question. Give it 2 more seconds. So I'm quite happy to say, Magnus, that our audience here is somehow aware about standardization and the importance of standardization, because usually we see that standardization is enters the conversation, let's say, way too late. But this looks quite good. We have to keep the slide and show it.
There's hope.
There is hope, yes. Thank you all. I'm going back to the presentation. So I still think, as you are well aware and you proved that, we can just skip the slide and we go immediately to Magnus' questions. So we have 4 questions for you, Magnus. Thank you again for agreeing to be here with us today. So first, why is standardization so persistently misunderstood in research?
It's
What are
the biggest.
Yeah, sorry.
So the biggest flaw of all, it's not part of the education system. It's a system defect, which is massive. So nobody are not even aware of the presence of standards. And the other problem is that those who do standards talk too much about what is standards instead of why standards and how do you use standards for doing anything relevant at all. And what they forget is that what defines the market is the standards. So if you want to sell anything, you need to relate to the standards, basically. And people also kind of misconceive the power of standards. I'll just make a biblical reference here. It's the only divine tool possessed by mankind. Standards, I mean. Have you ever heard of the Tower of Babel, where mankind tries, or the Babylonians trying to build a tower to reach the God?
Yes, yeah. You mean the language topic, yeah.
Yeah. And so what does God do? He introduces languages, and everybody stopped communicating. No more common understanding, no communication. They start to fight. They're spread around the world, and the tower collapses. Terminology or creating standards and agree on something is doing the exact opposite. It's the only divine tool possessed by mankind, and we're still not aware of it. It's even in the Old Testament. So it's a bit puzzling. It's that we do not apply all knowledge. So yeah, the biggest problem is that they don't know of standards. They don't know how it impacts and is integrated as part of society, and they're not educated in it. And we tell them too much what is instead of why. That is the problem.
So they need to, I'm
fast.
just reflecting on what you're saying. I'm just thinking if there's a part of the question I would like to focus on. But no, let's just skip it and go on to the next question. How can teams engage effectively? So you said it already. It's mostly about communication, about agreeing on a common language in order to move forward together. Yeah, what are practical steps?
Well, if you don't want to make a formal standard, at least when you start a project, which Kenneth said in his presentation, is creating a common understanding of what are we delivering? What are we doing? Well, that is the standard. It's a common understanding made in the written form to show what we agreed on, and that creates interoperability. It creates ability to communicate and remove misperceptions. It makes it easier to do something. So just starting on the common understanding part is good. Now, how can you engage in standard form? Well, you talk to a national standardization organization, and those are differently organized in different countries. It could be a national standards body. Contact them and say, we want to get engaged. Simple as that. Or you contact European level and say, I want to be engaged, and they will send you to a national, and the same at the global level, because there are 3 levels: national, regional, global. And you can engage on all levels as well. When you engage with the national standards body, there could be national standards, European or global standards. And they say, okay, it seems you're an expert. I want to engage in the committee nationally that mirrors whatever works happening internationally. And then you can join that committee. Sometimes you have to pay. So in some countries, like in Norway, you don't pay. And then you engage as an expert.
But if you don't want to engage as an expert, for example, you just want to consider standardization, you want to understand if standardization would be a pathway for your project, for example, how would you do that?
If I want to engage with, if standards are pathway, I say you need to understand how the market works, because one of the biggest problems and defects of project is that you can't document impact and you can't get anybody to adopt the project. Well, if you're compliant to the standards, there's a market. So it's different ways of engaging in standards. When also in the Menti here that they didn't really mention standard, but most of the answers is actually related to standards. It's how you engage with the markets. That is standards. It's where we can influence regulations too. So this is a really good way of bringing research results into the markets. You don't have to actively engage as an expert. You could talk to other who represents you and the project. It could be somebody from a project. You could talk to a union or different stakeholders that can present your point of view. And that could be enough. You can engage in a committee, but not as an active expert, more like an observer. As an observer, you know what's happening. and you know who's acting, and that is also interesting. And then you can make comments, which is good. That's easier and less expensive.
In relation then to your product, for example, and how this could then, and this could then be translated into your business modeling. And thank you. So it already leads me to the third question. So how do you help teams move from we should consider standards, which is actually where most of the projects stay, to concrete decisions that are then actually really embedded in the project plan, let's say with a named owner or a timeline? I think it can be quite difficult to find a volunteer for that.
Yeah, I normally start out with, do you want to be able to document that you can create impact with your new insights? Do you want to secure that people make use of your insights? And say, yes, that's a no-brainer. While if you manage to bring the new insights from the project, because that's regardless of what you do in a project, there's always new insights. And you manage that with intellectual asset management and you do something with it. But if you bring that into the standards or into regulation, because a lot of research projects come in regulation, this is the findings. But it's not made operational. It's still on a research basis. It's not operational. The moment you start engaging with standards and make comments on standards, it's made more actionable. And then it's easier to document it. So if you could document that new knowledge and results from this particular research project has improved the following standards, you just documented that you improved the entire market for every company working within that market. That is a really good impact. And that's why you probably should have started with thinking of standards even before you started with sending in the application. You should have analyzed what are the standards in the market before you send the application. And you would have should have looked into, well, when you make the project, you know what kind of insights you're looking for. So the new insight, which would be blah, 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 because that is something you know when writing a project, you know what you want to achieve. And then you just map out where that insights belong in the market structure, which is the standards. Then you already documented where you create impact even before you send the application. And then you send the application. Patents are good. Standards are also good. And sometimes I would say like Winnie the Pooh, yes, thank you both.
Yeah, and as you say, they represent state of the art at that moment and the market. So it's a huge power. This leads me also to the fourth question. So I really like this question. So how can gamified and interactive tools lower the barrier for non-specialists? I'm a big fan of serious games, so please, floor is yours.
Yes, so first of all, what is a serious game? Serious game is an interactive session where you learn by doing. Instead of observing and listening, you engage and you make use of it. And while you exchange perspectives, you need to argue with others at your own level. And you learn from their experience and examples, which is better. So a serious game is kind of a simulation where you engage with others, immerse in the context of whatever you're supposed to learn, and you apply it while learning. And most of the good examples you get from your peers, which means that they are more accurate to your needs. Because when they try to persuade you to do something within this simulation, they need to persuade you and they need to find relevant examples. That is why serious games are really good. And while when you want to learn something, reading something or getting just a book, that's interesting. It's made available, but you need to consume it and digest it. That's when you really understand it. And that's why it's good to do the simulations.
Creating reference points to your daily business. Yeah. Thank you. We're not done, Magnus. I'm just continuing the intro to standardization, and I hope you all, excuse me. I'm not the expert, but I also didn't want to overload Michele and Magnus, so I still prepared some, content. But what Magnus just said, to be honest, let out something I hear also confirmed by researchers. So it is about communication. You have to think of it early, and you have to understand the market. Still, we are not all sciencepreneurs, and many researchers are still also very much focused on conducting research and not doing market benchmarking or state of the art and freedom to operate analyses. So I just wanted to share the slide again after we talked about it, because we're going to share the slides with you, and perhaps, it can be useful. And now I want to go on and hear from you again. I didn't exaggerate when I said I exaggerated with mentees. So here is another one. What is the biggest barrier for you to integrating standardization in your projects? Well, let me introduce you to the options. Lack of awareness, lack of expertise, seen as too technical, not required by funders, or time and resource constraints. Lack of expertise, okay. Yeah, well, when you were just explaining, Magnus, I also thought it sounds so easy, but it's not at all, because you still have to understand what are the national standardization bodies, what's their focus. Then if you know Senelec or ETSI, they also have a, not Sen, but at the beginning they had also a sectorial focus. So I was also wondering, could you perhaps just quickly explain, standards are important for all the different sectors, could be, might be food, health, but also SSH. So could you just enlighten me? Are there sectors where you would say, okay, that's of course the biggest market, but there is also a upcoming market that no one didn't really see?
Well, there's standards for anything, which is sometimes also there. You might say it's too many standards. So sometimes the standard should be aligned across sectors, like urban air mobility. There is standards for mobility. There are standards for air flight. There's standards for space and satellites. And the moment you want to bring something in between, they're colliding with the standards. So there needs to be something integrating them and looking across sectors. And that is something the standards domain is working with. But there is the lack of, I would say, exchange between sectors. But there are standards for every sectors. For management systems, meaning how do you organize organizations to optimize something or improve the way an organization works? There's risk standards, there's safety standards, there's technical standards, there's specifications on the needs of what a electricians need to be able to do. There's requirements for processes to do something. There's standards for sustainability, guidance for, I would say, society, to how you organize a municipality to be more sustainable. So there's for whatever. The problem is that there's the lack of exchange across, and that's where we come in ourselves and need to get not only do the overview of patents, but also do the overview of standards, and need to talk to the national standards body to do not only a prior art search for what is in the basket of patents, do the same for standards.
Yeah, I was also stumbling upon standards again, perhaps also because I now start thinking more about them. But when it comes to research security, now that's a big topic, and standards are playing a huge role there as well. So coming back to our mentee, sorry, got carried away. So the majority says it's a lack of expertise. So thank you for joining us today to somehow work on this lack of expertise together. And on my next slide, I would like to introduce you to a practical standardization instrument, which is a CVA. What does it mean? It's a SEN workshop agreement. And Magnus, should I leave it to you, or should we start with the mentee I have prepared? Because I wanted to know how familiar you are with a CVA. Have you ever heard of it?
Let's do the mentee, and then I can add on top afterwards.
Thank you. Okay, so how familiar are you with CVAs? Have you heard of it? Not familiar at all. Yeah, that's okay. I'm happy because we found something everybody's taking home. You will remember that. I'm glad.
And the beauty of this is really good for research projects.
Yeah.
And also the last resort, if you forgot, this is your potential backup plan if you
I
manage
think
to
the
allocate the resources.
last resort is really just the publication on the Horizon Results platform. That's the very last resort.
Yes.
If you didn't do
But
anything.
with regard to standards, this is a very good starting point. And since everybody is not familiar at all, at least enough respondents, we could move back to your previous slide.
Yes, let's go back. Thank you so
So,
much.
before explaining what a CVA or Send Workshop Agreement is, I could tell you there's different types of standards. There's terminology standard, which aligns what something is. There's standards like something called technical reports. It's just reporting something. It's a kind of collection of insights. There's the technical specification, which are something that just specify how something should work or something should be done. And then there's the actual standards, which is at a higher level and where you could certify against it. So you do a third party to check if you're compliant to that actual standards. Those are different degrees of it. And to create those standards, it takes from 12 months to several years to develop them.
Yeah.
It takes quite a lot of time. That's why you should start with the standards in the beginning of the project. You should know when new insights kind of can pop into the standards work. A workshop agreement, well, that depends on the workshop agreement. The timeline you agree with the standards body setting it up. A workshop
Wait,
agreement.
let's start with the definition. You're already entering too
Yes.
deep because I think
Yes,
you
thank
lost
you.
me, so I think we lost also the audience.
Yes, so this is a very simplistic starting point for a standard. So it's where you have, for example, the consortium partners and potential externals of that consortium can agree on what is the starting point and some common nominators for a technology because this is too new. Agree on the basic terminology. This is the starting point, and that is published. And then somebody else can then build on that to make a standard later on. For example, when we had the corona, and as an example for Norway, how can we make a national standard be applied instantly? So within a week, they created a workshop agreement in Norway for those you put over your mouth.
But don't you need to have, just to say what I found, a
Yes,
SEN workshop
please.
agreement is a consensus-based specification developed through an open workshop process. So for me, that means that you have to meet with a specific group of people into a certain amount of times in order to agree on something in a written form. That's it, right?
Yes, that's the basic, which that's what I mentioned because it's already written. So I figured out, let's not
Just
say
to say it out
what's
loud.
written.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for in the basic, you could do this whenever if you get a collection of people to develop this jointly. But if you're within the consortium or research project, you do it within the research project and get it published. Or my examples with what I forgot the English word here, the mask you put, the face mask to protect you from the corona.
Weird.
Is that? And then my brain stopped on the wording here. They needed something very fast. So they engaged with different relevant stakeholders on governmental level and organizations to say, what are the requirements for a workshop agreement and baseline for a potential future standard? And we need it fast as possible. They engaged with relevant stakeholders. They agreed on what is the requirement for such a device, what is the elements of it, and what is the safety levels or the level it should then be able to remove germs. That is what everything they put in. And that was a starting point for mass production of those face masks. So it's something you could use to get an agreement very fast, to adopt something very fast for emergencies or adopt into, but as a starting point for a standard.
But do you need specific stakeholders in these workshops, like NSBs, for example?
It could be you need an NSB to manage it because you need to follow the rules of how you develop the standards to be allowed to be a standard. You don't want to make a cartel to set it up. That is illegal. So that you would not want to do. So you need somebody to make sure that you follow the process of the standards body. And there's something figure out you can draw on the page, and that's very funny. And then there's the other element is that you need to define the deliverables of whatever you're developing here. And
Okay.
then
And
then you need to find the stakeholders.
why is it then called SEN workshop agreement? Because SEN was the first one to come up with this idea and then they trademarked it?
That's a good one. It's a European workshop agreement. So it applies for Europe going beyond the European Union. Like Norway is not part of the European Union, but the Norwegian standards or organizations is part of SEN. So this is something that will be representing Europe and all of the European countries being members of SEN. So that's what it could also be an international workshop agreement, and it's on ISO level.
Thank you. That is enlightening. Thank you very much. So I hope we can get rid of Gustavo's art again, otherwise it stays on the screen. Thank you, Magnus. This was really very interesting. And on my next slide, I would just quickly go back to impact itself because, okay, we've been talking about impact very much. I don't know how we can get rid of, well, just ignore it. We are anyway sharing the slides and it's more about what's on the slides. So we have heard from Michele and Magnus, and I want to bring the two threads together before we go into the panel discussion. Still, I see also the time, so we only have 9 minutes left. I can also just say, okay, designing impact from day one, to be honest, these are self-explanatory bullet points. You don't need me to explain them again. We've been through that. And Gustavo is going on. Perhaps, Claudia, you can help me to somehow stop this. Okay, let's go back to the Mentimeter because I would like to know if a project wants to maximize impact, what should happen first? Strengthen dissemination, define curves early. You know, we've been talking about these two perspectives, so I would like to know what do you see now as priorities? You should align outputs with standards. You should protect results through IP or IPR. And you should engage end users. So the choice is yours. Let me know. So I think you all saw Claudia's reply. She cannot do anything. So Gustavo, this is for you. Please stop creating art on the screen. Yeah, the point was that we wanted everyone to have the same rights as we wanted you to be able to activate your microphone at the end of the session. And otherwise, that wouldn't be possible. So thank you. So most of you think that, oh, wow, you should align outputs with standards. We did the job, Magnus. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This is good. But if people could have crossed out too, I think they would have crossed out align standards and then map out the IP because they are, I would say, hand in hand. Those are two sides of the exact same coin. If you haven't mapped out the IP, you wouldn't know what to put into the standard and you would know what to protect.
But if you also don't know your end user, then there is no impact, you know, if you don't understand what the user wants. Also,
so then you have some major issues.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. I wanted to talk about how you two would manage this. What would you do? Because, you know, you didn't reply, for example, Michele. What would you do first with your focus on IAM and IP? Still, where are standards?
I actually did reply.
Well, you said before, but concretely, how would you do that? I would like to know.
No, I thought that the Mentimeter reply. My reply was to define early key exploitable results because I think the key is there. You need to understand what you have, how to improve, maximize the chances that what you have is really an asset, so it's valuable, and then understand how to use that asset. But if you don't understand what you have in your hands, then basically you can try to set up every form of potential uses that come to your mind, but it's going to be a guess necessarily. So starting from that point there,
I tend to agree, but you have to know the market first, and their standards come into play also even a bit earlier, right?
Yeah, that definitely. But if you haven't properly defined and understood your really the core of your output, and especially in terms of how to prepare it for the exploitation, you've got much less chances. And then standards are anyway inside that as well, because they're part of that preparation. Absolutely,
but you could start
yes.
to redesign your product after you understood that this is what the market needs.
Yes, but if you don't know what you have,
Okay.
we're still there, like biting our tail with that or the other. Of course, we need everything. Since I had to choose, let's say, one of those five, in my experience, I've chosen the definition of the key exploitable results because it's also the one that I do the most. Let's say I don't venture in others. In a way. But I guess that wasn't your question, was it, Claire? You were asking me something else.
Yeah, I wanted to ask as well, which action creates the most durable foundation for exploitation?
Yeah.
But I need you
Back
to
there.
keep it really short, one sentence, because we only have 3 minutes left and everybody will jump ship in 3 minutes. So
No. I reiterate what I said before. Know what you have and then plan around it. That's what
okay.
I would say. Yeah.
Okay, and Magnus, my last question for you. At what point does the absence of a standard strategy become irreversible?
I'll make an example. You have a Norwegian company, part of a huge consortium, and they had an exploitation plan. The project is finished and they have patented and want to go into the market to sell this product. The problem is this is part of a ship. And to be able to sell this, they need to certify the ship against this to get their insurance. As long as this was not part of the standards, there was no market. 100 million Norwegian kroner, that's how many euros is out of the window. It's useless. They need to start a standards and market is gone. The entire research project is useless. What they should have done is do standards alongside in parallel. And then when they wanted, in this 5-year project, wanted to implement this new technology, the standard was ready to certify against, and then there could be other solutions, and then they could have done both. So that is the best example to do both. But to kind of, what should you do? Start out knowing what you want to create for whom and how. Do your inventory as you go and know how you want to use that inventory, which is new knowledge, how you want to create impact with it. Standards and IP, those are go hand in hand and normally not exclusively. Patent before you put it into the standards, essential, or know what you can put into the standards, what to keep as trade secret, and then they basically do intellectual asset management as you go along and keeping a strategy for what you want to impact the standard with, and that's it. For me, yeah, and whom to
Easy
make the
peasy.
impacts. Yes, you need to know who to make the impact because you don't have to send the entire consortium. You could just send somebody, one of the partners, into different standards, and then the time consumption is far less.
Thank you. Okay, we have 1 minute left. I know some of you could perhaps stay because I also saw already some questions in the chat I would like to tackle. So we will definitely go on, but before those of you who have to leave, I have the last Menti for you, and thank you. I would like to know, we started with the word cloud, and I would like to know one word you take away from today. Oh. Michaela, I need you to reply.
No, I thought in the Mentimeter, sorry, I was just trying to enter the Mentimeter again.
Yeah, it's the Menti. I was kidding. I was just saying because no one was reacting to my call
Okay.
to action.
Takes
Yeah.
time to
Standards,
write.
perfect. Yeah, standardization. Thank you. CVA. Hey, intellectual asset management, please. Come on. We also talked about impact. We talked about both.
I didn't convince
That's
them.
not fair.
It's
Because
part
it's not
of the
one
work on
more.
standards.
Because
It's part of the standardization. You can't do standards without intellectual asset management.
Okie dokie. Thank you. I even have one more, but I think we answered that somehow. No, let's go back here. So I wanted to know how confident you feel integrating intellectual asset management and standardization now, just to show everybody that there was a learning curve. So I don't feel yet up to it. I start to feel up to it. It's growing. I'm confident and I'm ready. Well, beginning is good. Thank you, the three of you who replied.
Ooh.
It's already 31, I know.
I feel ready.
This is good.
Yeah, this is really good. And I think
while
we
people
did
are
quite a good
answering,
job working on this demystifying of standardization as an impact pathway. Okay. Thank you so much. This is everything we wanted as an outcome. And the key messages of today. So impact is designed, not discovered. It's you design the project you're working in proactively. Intellectual asset management turns results into pathways. So remember the triangle I showed you: knowledge valorization, deployment, and uptake. And standardization turns pathways into adoption. So thank you so much.
There's a very important questions in the chat, so I could just answer that very
yes.
fast.
Let
No,
me
it
read
does
it.
not.
Let me read the
Yes, please.
question. So, let's show the key takeaways. So thank you, Fernando. So first of all, I wanted to share that perhaps you also saw this. Paul shared that for a workshop agreement, all you need is one national standards body and the research consortium members. So very low entry barrier, and can develop the workshop agreement pre-standard easily within the time frame of the project. So thank you, Paul, for sharing this. And here the question of Fernando is: do you agree that it is generally a good allocation of resources to orientate low TRL projects towards contributing to standards, and that high TRL projects should rather focus their efforts on complying with standards? Magnus, this is for you.
I would say that any research project has interesting results regardless of TRL. And you could use that insight to comment that you can improve the requirement for risk into a standard. It doesn't link to the actual technical solution, or you can document it's possible or plausible, which increases the requirements in the market and does drive innovation, get the rest of the market to meet those requirements. I would say that is irrelevant factor. Any kind of level of the technology can be used into standards, but differently.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question. I understand, but Fernando, please let us know. And then there is another question from Paulina. Does that mean for research project a standardization equals certificates or IP protection or procedures while entering the market? Sorry, Lola.
So for the standards part, it does not say it's certifications. It could also be if you make a terminology standard for something, because there's a need of measuring something. You need an alignment of what something is for sustainability. You don't need certification for that. So the certification is if it's more mature. So I would say for research project, normally not, but sometimes it's good for the market. So it depends.
And when it comes to IP, Michele, you want to answer or should I?
Answer, please.
Yeah, IP in this case only gives you the control over the asset. So yeah, this is the main comment. You keep the control over whatever you're working on. and you are then the one who can commercialize it. So 5 minutes over the time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for taking the time, for asking questions, for keeping up with all the mentees I put together. And thank you, Magnus and Michele, for sharing all your experience with us. That was really amazing. Thanks.
Thanks to you. It's been a pleasure.
We will share the presentation and the mentee results and perhaps also the recording within, I don't know, the next days in a follow-up email. But you will also find everything on the website. And of course, I have to say this, in case you didn't take a look yet, we created amazing content bringing IAM and standardization closer together. So we developed, for example, the training suite consisting of 12 different training modules, and each module is focusing on the specific topic, but always brings in the perspective of standardization. So check this out. Check out our massive open online course. That's really for beginners who have no prior knowledge whatsoever. We created videos, short videos, so it doesn't take you too long. Thank you. Bye-bye.